and suggesting that Victor Gyokeres has decided that perhaps Manchester United is not to be his next destination. I mean, you've kind of answered this already, Henry, but Manchester United, a massive, massive club. We know that Cunha from Wolves has agreed to go there. We hear Brian Mbeumo very tempted, although Spurs are now very much in the mix, but Gyokeres doesn't seem to fancy it. Is it fair to say that Manchester United, it doesn't have the same pull as it would have done? You mentioned Sir Alex Ferguson earlier. I mean, those days, they could have signed anybody. It's not like that anymore, is it?
It's not, but it's still Manchester United. It's still huge. There will still be big payers. There's Ruben Amorim there, and that's the Gyokeres connection. I think he got crazy amount of goals playing for Sporting for Amorim, something like sort of 52 and 57 games, or just, so obviously he would fit into that role, that 3-4-2-1 system that Amorim wants to play. And Rasmus Højlund has had his chance. I mean, he's hardworking, but he's not in Gyokeres' league. The dynamic here is obviously with Arsenal, and Arsenal are pursuing Šeško, and if Gyokeres is their second choice, I mean it's difficult to compare the two because Šeško is 22, he's not as prolific. They're playing in a more difficult league than Gyokeres, but I think both of those two will be playing in England next season. It's just working out where. But Gyokeres, I really like. I think he's just prolific. He's a hard worker. He understands the physicality and the need for pressing and the work ethic of the English game, having played over here. So I could see why Manchester United would pursue him, and why Arsenal would want him as well. I mean, Arsenal have wanted a number 9 for about the last 5 or 6 years. But yeah, your point is right in terms of the attraction of Manchester United, and they still are huge. You go to Manchester United, it's like echoing our Newcastle conversation. You go and stand outside the mega store on a rainy Wednesday afternoon without a match for ages, and it is busy. There are people from all over the world. Manchester United are still a big draw, and they will still be for players. Their problem, of course, is that they're not in the Champions League, and someone like Gyokeres, like Šeško and others will want to play in that. But I think Matheus Cunha, getting that in, a player of that quality, an serious player in early, sets the tone, and others will see that. But of course, we all know the issue at Manchester United. They've got to get rid of about 6 or 7 players out and then sort of 5 or 6 in. But, I think they mean business. They've showed that with Cunha.
Yeah, it's a fair point. It is a big rebuild. Dom's, you've been saying for weeks, I mean, the rebuild at Manchester United, it ain't going to happen in one window.
Yeah, I think, before this window opened, I think that was the narrative. And it's clear, given what Henry's just said there, the number of players that they need to bring in and the number of players that they need to ship out, it's probably impossible to do it in one transfer window. But when this window opened and you get that situation where Cunha arrives almost immediately, they do their business, bang, £62.5 million paid to Wolves, right, Cunha's in. Mbeumo, the feeling is that he's leaning towards United, even though Tottenham Hotspur are interested as well. And suddenly the United fans are thinking, goodness me, look how quickly this is going. Let's get a striker in now as well, and we'll get the midfielder, and we need that centre-half we want, and we'll get the full... I think the excitement builds, and I think people just need to take a step back because it's going to be impossible to do all of that in the one window. Henry mentioned the departures that need to happen. I mean, if you look at the players that they're targeting at the moment in Cunha and Mbeumo, they're likely to play in the number 10 roles that Amorim has in his formation. And if you think about the players that are at United at the moment who could possibly play in those roles, Rashford, Sancho, Antony, Garnacho, those are the ones that United will see that they can get good money for. But that is easier said than done as well, because you could just say, right, yeah, let's just get rid of these 4 and then bring in, I don't know, a striker and another player that we need to prioritise. It's not as easy as that, because as much as United would prefer selling Rashford, selling Sancho, selling Antony, selling Garnacho, and getting what I would think would be around £125 million all in for those players, which would be able to fund the rest of their transfer window. It's not going to be that easy. These players, especially Rashford and Sancho, they're on big wages. So it's going to be a situation where United, however much they would prefer a permanent deal, they might have to look at the loan market again and see if they can offload some of the wages, at least get a loan fee and just pick up bits and pieces of money in that way. But it is clear that those number 10 positions have been a priority. We do know a priority position is a striker. We do know that they made contact via intermediaries over Gyokeres. Is also Hugo Ekitike is a player, is an interesting one. I know that, Pete, you'll remember that name because we spoke about him in Newcastle for a number of windows. There are a number of other Premier League clubs who are interested in him as well. But it's our understanding that Manchester United have actually approached Eintracht Frankfurt over the possibility of a deal and just exploring what a kind of a deal it would look like. We're told that personal terms wouldn't be a problem. Look, we know how it works in transfers. Sometimes you're not going to approach a club unless you're getting some sort of encouragement somewhere that the player would be open to some kind of move. So on that side of it, that one could have some legs, the Ekitike one. It's a player we know that they've been looking at for a number of years. They've tracked his development. So it's not a surprising one, that one. Gyokeres would be the obvious one because of the relationship he's had with Ruben Amorim. But from the outset, especially from all the reports in Portugal, he wanted Champions League football. And it's interesting to see Ruben Amorim has always been steadfast in one thing. And he said it in a news conference, which I always remember earlier on last season, where he said, I want people to come to Manchester United, regardless of whether United have got Champions League football, European football or not. So that's his base. So if he finds that players are umming and ahhing because there's no European football, I don't think he's interested.
If Ekitike wants to go to a club where he can hear his name said in so many different ways, Newcastle's the club for him. But sadly, I don't think it's going to happen. But I'm just gutted that I can't hear. Yeah, I can only imagine. Henry, I got to ask you about Marcus Rashford, mate, because obviously you're exclusive with him. Huge headlines back in January. He came out, he said he wanted to leave Manchester United. He got to Aston Villa. Every time I saw him, I thought he did well there. But he's in a situation now where he's sort of looking for a new home, it would seem, or potentially a future at Manchester. I mean, how do you read the current Marcus Rashford situation? You know better than anyone.
I mean, he's out in Spain, in Marbella, posting pictures of him supremely fit in training, which seems to be the sort of modern way of doing things, almost transfer negotiation by Instagram. The game's definitely changed from talking to the local newspaper. So I mean, he's obviously fit. It was frustrating, I think, for him towards the end of the season that he was injured. But I mean, Darmish's point is really significant because the four players you mentioned, they're all wingers. They all work best in a 4-3-3. They don't fit this tactical template, even including the issue with the wages. So Rashford needs to go to a club which plays with natural width, not with wing backs, not with sort of number 10s. And I mean, Barcelona, I'm sure he'd love Barcelona, but Rafinha's been one of their players of the season, and Rafinha's in better form than Marcus Rashford. So look, he's a very talented player. Obviously, Thomas Tuchel likes him, whether that's because of the two games he had for Manchester United, where he did so well against PSG's defence when Tuchel was there. But he obviously likes him, and that ferocious pace hasn't gone. That goal threat, I mean, he got 2 or 3 goals for and a few assists for 4 goals and a couple of assists for Villa. So I always thought that if he was going to stay in England, that he would go to a club like Tottenham Hotspur, but they've got Matthias Dahl who's playing out there because Heung-min Son's sort of powers are fading, and Rashford would have been very good on the left. But look, as ever with modern footballers, it comes down to money, and I just think that Marcus Rashford is going to have to take a substantial cut if he wants to be playing, and if he wants to seize this opportunity to go to the World Cup. But I think with Darmish is right. I think it possibly could be another loan. Which I do think he needs to cut the ties because Amorim doesn't want him. He wants to move on. So you've almost got a sort of half divorce going on. Let's have the decree nisi.
Yeah, Sancho in the same boat really as Rashford, and you do wonder. I mean, it's tough. Manchester United are obviously trying to bring in all these players, but you look at it, you think that, like you said right at the offset, Henry, they need to get a few out as well. And Sancho in the same boat, Darms, as Rashford, two players that they'll be sort of hoping to bring in some significant funds, but it's not going to be easy.
It isn't, and that's the issue that United have had. I think it worked for United to have this loan with the obligation with Chelsea, and I think, what they would have wanted to happen was that the obligation would have been triggered. Yes, they've got this free £5 million, if you like, because Chelsea didn't trigger that option, the obligation rather, to sign Sancho. But you're in now that situation where, again, there's a player that's coming back to Manchester United who's probably not wanted at Manchester United. That said, this was the issue that Jadon Sancho had with Erik ten Hag. So he hasn't really done anything with Ruben Amorim at all. So I don't know whether there's even the smallest of chances whether he comes back, and is he going to get reintegrated in any kind of way if Manchester United can't find a home for him? What kind of relationship does he have with Ruben Amorim? Have they actually even spoken? But I think from a financial point of view and the way that United are moving, you would think that Rashford, Sancho, Garnacho, Antony are the players that they'll see as maybe bringing in enough funds and, taking their wages off the books for them to be able to pursue some of their other targets in this transfer window. But like I said, it's easier said than done. These four players, they might not all get sold in this transfer window. You might see a mix of one or two sold and a couple of loans, and then you'll be revisiting this situation again in another transfer window. But I'm sure that Ruben Amorim will want that situation where he'll want to work with a slightly smaller squad this season, simply because there isn't European football this time around. And you know what? It should benefit him in one way. Of course, United don't not want to be in European football, but the fact of the matter is, he's got this formation that he wants to drill into every single one of his players. If you're in a situation where you're playing one game a week, is that going to help you get back into those Champions League places for the following season? The last time I think that Manchester United weren't in Europe was Louis van Gaal's first season at United, if I remember correctly, the post David Moyes / Ryan Giggs caretaker season. And that ended up with United finishing in the top four and qualifying for the Champions League for the following season. I'm not saying it's going to happen again because there's a lot of competition, but plenty of work to be done, both on and off the pitch, you'd think.
Pete, can I just